Councillors, I put agenda item PSR 20/015, Batemans Bay Regional Aquatics Arts and Leisure Centre. Can I have a mover and seconder, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I am putting a motion forward for deferment of this matter. I have sent Anna a letter of a proposed motion. Could we just have an adjournment for 2 minutes while I forward this to the rest of the councillors, please?
Councillor, we have it
first,
and share it on the screen already. Can you just?
I have a few different, a slight amendment to what I gave Anna. I have just sent that through to all councillors now.
Just one moment. So, councillors, sorry, we were just working out the process. Before I call for the moving of the amendment and a seconder, we're going to share the proposed amendment for you on the screen.
Can we have some clarity about whether it needs to be moved first and then go into amendment, or do we just do straight move through deferral?
Just wait a moment, Councillor Brown. Have a read of the amendment and then I will call for a mover and seconder for the amendment to allow for any debate that will be forthcoming.
We're not debating yet, so.
Okay, councillors, we have, hopefully you've had time enough to read the proposed amendment. Councillor Constable, you are moving the proposed amendment.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not sure if it's an amendment or it's actually, as the issue that Councillor Brown actually nominated, that this was an alternate motion at this time. So
it's a motion.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a change. So, councillors, you have a proposed motion in front of you for debate. It needs a second, presuming Councillor Constable, you're moving it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, yes.
And Councillor Main, I'm taking it you're seconding it. So, councillors, you have a proposed motion in front of you now. I'm going to open it up for debate and questions. Councillors. Councillor May.
Yeah, just a quick one, Madam Mayor, in terms of, I'm not sure where this will possibly go. I've only just seen this, as we all have, this motion. I was going to ask if we could have a committee of the whole, should we go into the other debate. Can we bring that forward now, the committee of the whole, given that there might be some toing and froing on this issue? Is that worthwhile? I'd just like to put that out there.
You can do that, Councillor Main, but we can do that at any time through the debate. Councillor Main, why don't we just hold off and see how the debate and questions go? Because at any stage you can propose that we go into the committee of the whole on this matter if it requires more debate. Councillors, look, I'm just going to make a couple of points on this proposed motion. And I'd just like to state by saying that the tender prices cannot be given to the audit committee. I'd also like to point out to councillors that the audit committee has already had a number of briefings on this matter, including a specific briefing by the consultants. And I'd also like to point out that Councillor Constable could have, in the last week or 2 weeks, requested an extraordinary meeting for this to have been dealt with prior to it coming to the chamber today. They're just the comments I'm going to make on that. So, councillors, are there any other questions or debate on the motion? Councillor May.
Yeah, just a quick question, just on that point, in terms of what can't be shared with the risk audit risk committee. How does the audit risk committee truly assess risk and any related governance, etc., issues on such a matter of this, given the extent of the financials on the table, if they can't have access to the tender price? I understand, I think you were saying that there's the governance and the commercial in confidence, but are we saying that we can't share this sort of information with our audit and risk committee?
That's correct, but I'll get the General Manager to just give you the
Thank you.
regulatory framework around that, Councillor Munn.
So, through the Mayor, firstly, in relation to, there are 2 overriding legislation that you need to be aware of. One is the Local Government Act, and under the Local Government Act, you would have heard me read at various times going into confidential that it is confidential if it's commercial information of a confidential nature that will be disclosed, prejudice the commercial position of a person who supplied it, or confer a commercial advantage on a competitor of the council. Also, just to quote the local government tendering guidelines, which specifically says that council must not disclose tender information received from tenderers, that is intellectual property, proprietary, commercial in confidence or otherwise confidential. And then it goes on in relation to that until council has resolved the outcome of the tender. So it's very clear that it cannot be disclosed to any other person who has resolved to either accept, modify or reject the tender.
Councillor McGinley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Getting away from the actual tender costs, I'm also wondering, has the Audit and Risk Committee been made aware of the total proposed cost of this project that we're going to be voting on today? And are they aware of the gap between the amount we already have for grants and loans and that total budget, and where the sources of that additional funding is going to be sought from?
Through the Mayor, that has not happened because Council cannot divulge the contract amount. So therefore, it's all in the same budget.
Just to continue, regardless of the contract or the proposed tender contract, we'll be voting today on approving a budget of X amount of dollars. Has the Audit Committee been made aware of the total of that budget which we are proposing to pass today, regardless of what the tender cost is?
Through the Mayor, no, that's not been the case because it's been commercial in confidence to go to Council as the decision makers.
Councillor Main.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just through you another question. We just want to pick up again on this point on the role of the Audit and Risk Committee, acknowledging that we have two councils that sit on that committee, plus its government-appointed auditors, plus 3 esteemed members of our community who are locked into confidentiality. One of the issues and the question is, how do they do their job? And this is looking at the risk component of it. Given there's a business case, which we're going to discuss today, although I understand it's commercial confidence again, but if there's a risk about the operating nature of this and how we're going to pay for it year in, year out, do we then vote, accept the risk, and then go back to the Audit Committee and say, what do you think of the risk we just voted on? I just don't understand how they get to do that after we vote. I would have thought they would have been part of the holistic governance review and preparation for this.
Through the Mayor, the Audit Committee have been fully briefed on the operating costs, and that's where the Mayor indicated that they had access to our consultant, and the consultant went through the briefing, the confidential briefing in relation to not the tender price, but the operating, and the Audit Committee had a special session with the consultant on the operating costs going forward.
Sure. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Brown.
Noting that you've sort of got to try and catch me in the question so I can actually keep some time to debate. Can a general manager, I think there seems to be a bit of a misunderstanding of the role of the Audit Committee and the responsibilities they have. Can you please just, for the benefit of those listening out there as well, and for my colleagues, to explain the role of the Audit Committee, Audit and Risk and Improvement Committee, and the role they have in decision making?
Through the Mayor, the Audit Committee have no decision making role at all. They are an advisory committee to the Council. And I'll just make the point again that this topic or this project has been on every agenda of the Risk and Audit Committee since pretty much day one. And they have been briefed to the extent that in relation to what is not commercial in confidence.
Right, so the benefit of having any of this information go to the Audit and Risk Committee really is of no consequence in, oh, not, it's the wrong word. Whilst if we went back to the Audit and Risk Committee, the information they would be receiving is exactly what they've been receiving in the past and no more new information.
Through the Mayor, they could have an update in relation to some of the information contained confidentially in this report, which they haven't. However, in relation to the operating, back to Councillor Main's question, that has been briefed in some detail. So it's not correct to say they've got all the information, but it is correct to say that they have been briefed to the extent that they have at every meeting that they've had. And just to again confirm that they are not a decision-making body, they're an advisory committee.
No, so there would be no recommendation coming back from the Audit Committee on that. They would actually just have the information, that have a discussion, and then that's it. Is that correct?
But they could make a recommendation as an advisory committee through the Mayor.
They could make them, yeah, but that means then we have to, they would actually wouldn't be in a position to make that fully briefed because they wouldn't have all the information.
That could be correct.
So yeah, so they'd be advising in the absence of information. Okay, so the benefit would be nil. Right. Okay.
Councillor Nathan.
Leading on from what Councillor Brown said, we as councillors in our briefings have very full information, I believe, over the years, and in particular over the last couple of months, that are confidential. We as the elected body who make the decisions have been thoroughly briefed. So to receive more opinion, because that is what it will end up, from the Risk and Audit Committee, and it's an opinion that is very useful in many occasions, but to get something further, my question is, would it actually change anything as far as the information that we as councillors have received in our briefings?
So there's no question in there, Councillor Nathan.
Yes, there was.
Sorry, what was the question? Well, okay, it's a subjective question. Okay, Councillor.
Will there be anything that comes from the Audit Committee that would be different to, or other than being an opinion, to the information that we as a council of 9 have received over the last 2 months?
Don't know, Councillor.
Well, through the Mayor, that would be a subjective. We would not be able to second guess what the Audit Committee might recommend, but as you say, they're not the decision-making body. I think Councillor McKinley said the same.
Councillor McKinley, do you actually still have your hand up, or have you just? Thank you. I knew that. Others didn't. Councillor Main.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you. Could I just seek clarification on what Councillor Brown's comment? I effectively heard Councillor Brown saying that the Audit Risk Committee, without all the information, the benefit would be nil. For the public record, that's a really significant statement. That's basically saying our Audit Risk Committee has no effect unless it has 100% of information at all times. I don't think that was your intention, but just wanted to clarify that.
No, you're right.
Councillor Pollock.
The original question was on the operating costs of the pool. The operating costs have been fully briefed to the Audit and Risk Assessment Committee. The further question was, is the Audit and Risk Committee, are they going to be provided with any more factual data relating to the overall contract? The answer is no. They have been fully briefed on the business case by the consultant, as have all councillors who chose to make themselves available, as some did not. So they're the questions. So there is nothing more. It's a rhetorical situation. There is nothing more to be placed before the Audit Committee for them to make a more informed decision than they have already provided.
Okay, Councillor Constable, I think I'm going to ask you, I think we've exhausted all the questions and debate. Is that correct, councillors? Councillor Constable, I'll ask you if you would like to close the debate.
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. I'd like to start out by indicating that this is an independent audit committee with independent thinking people on it that will bring. It won't necessarily be an opinion, but if it is an opinion, it'll be a very well educated opinion, because we had some very valuable people and constructive people on that committee. To diminish that is really reprehensible, and I admonish the councillors that have done so by influencing by what they've said today. What I'm getting at is not, we have spoken. Okay, the Audit Committee are a parrot. If they are a parrot for what they get from council, then nothing will change. This is not a parroting organisation. What I'm asking here is exactly what they're for. They are here for, to offer advice. I am concerned about the business case and the implications of the cash flow that we're going to be receiving from the business because of the implications of COVID and other further restrictions that may be in place down in future. I am also fairly concerned about the nature of the, how should I say, design and build, the adequacy of the air conditioning system and whether or not we will have to upgrade that air conditioning system. How long the social distancing stays in place has an enormous implication, as we've seen, on the pool functionality and obviously its cash flow, as well as its actual functionality of the art space. If masks are sufficient, and people are using masks now, and we can go into the art space and still share adjacent seats, that's fine. It might be okay, and particularly with an elevated air conditioning system. These are just a few of the things that have crossed my mind. I'm asking for assistance from those other very well-educated people to bring this forward. I'm not particularly worried. They can have what is the documentation that's gone out to tender. There shouldn't be any commercial confidence in that. It's irrespective of the tender. We're looking at the Otium business case here in the future, and that's where my concern is. With that, I'll close the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Constable. All right, I will put the matter of the proposed motion to councillors. Those in favour? Those in favour are Councillor Constable, Councillor McGinley and Councillor Main. Those against are Councillor Tate, myself, Councillor Innes, Councillor Nathan, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Pollock and Councillor Brown. The motion has been lost. So councillors, we go back to the original motion. And again, I put agenda item PSR 20/015, Batemans Bay Regional Aquatics Arts and Leisure Centre. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Pollock, seconded by Councillor Tate. Councillors, I open it up for questions and debate. Councillor Thompson. You had your hand up, Councillor Thompson? No?
No, that was just to second it, but Jack did it.
Sorry. Councillor Main.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just through you, I'd like to propose that we do go into the committee of the whole. If that was the extent of the debate as a precursor, this could be really interesting. I'd welcome the chance to have a few bites of this cherry. So I'd like to recommend we go into committee of the whole.
So you're moving to go into the committee of the whole, Councillor, and I'm assuming Councillor McGinley, you're seconding it? Seconded by Councillor McGinley. All those in favour of going into the committee of the whole? So those in favour are Councillor Tate, myself, Councillor Innes, Councillor McGinley, Councillor Main, Councillor Pollock, Councillor Brown and Councillor Constable, and Councillor Thompson. Those against? Councillor Nathan. The motion to move into committee of the whole has been carried. Councillor McGinley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an initial question to the General Manager, but first, just a little bit of background. In the agenda item, the report that goes to the public, there's a lot of information about the proposed tender winner, but not very much about the actual total project budget. Most of that is in our confidential councillors attachment. Within that confidential document, there's some things which I believe should not be confidential. And among those are the sources of funding that Council proposes to adopt today when we approve the total project budget. And understand there's a number of reserved funds and some asset sales. And I realise there's a lot of concern about maintaining commercial and confidence information about the tender, but this is not relevant to that tender. It's about acknowledging that there is a gap between the existing funding which has been allocated through grants and loans, and the proposed total budget. It's how we fill that gap that I'm concerned about. And I would like the General Manager to just outline to the public, as we councillors know, the sources of those additional budget funds. That's my first question. Thank you.
Through the Mayor. So, Councillor McGinley, I can go through where the funding is coming from without giving figures. So there are 4 reserves that Council has, and they are the Infrastructure Renewal Fund, the Real Estate Disposal Fund, the Development Contribution Section 94A, and the Crown Reserves. The purpose of these reserves is to have focus on new community infrastructure, and specifically in one of the funds, the Section 94A, aquatic centres are specifically listed for renewal. So Council has been planning for this for some time, based on the fact that Council may decide to progress this particular project. The other 2 sources are from asset sales that have been approved by Council already, which is in part the funds from Southern Phone and in part funds from the Maria Racecourse sale. So those 6 areas are where the recommendation for the total budget will be coming from.
Councillors, any other questions or debate? Councillor Main.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, through you. Just when we talk, can we just, for the clarity, appreciate we've already approved the asset sales. Are we able to at least list what the asset sales proposed here are?
Sorry, could you just repeat the last part of the question?
Just like, can we actually, when the GM says, Madam Mayor, asset sales already approved, what are the specific assets in question?
Through the Mayor, I've indicated that there's 2 assets, the Southern Phone, which you may have a conflict with if I continue, and also the racecourse. They are the 2 assets, as I've indicated. There's no other asset sales that is in the budget.
Councillors, any more? Councillor Nathan.
Going a bit further through you, Madam Mayor, to our General Manager, when you say that there are funds available, does that mean that there will still be residual funds available in those pockets of cash, reserves?
Yes.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor McGinley.
Yeah, just on one of those reserve funds, we talk about the Infrastructure Renewal Fund, and obviously I'm not going to go into the quantum. Presumably these are internally restricted funds, am I correct?
I'll need to get advice. The Infrastructure Renewal Fund is internally restricted, but I understand the developer contributions and the Crown reserves are not internally restricted, they're externally restricted, but my colleagues can confirm that if Ms Jones is on the line, or Mr Sharp would also be aware.
Yes, Captain, you've got that right.
Thank you.
External restrictions are the infrastructure fund, or their internal restrictions, the infrastructure fund, as you said, and the developer contributions are externally restricted, exactly as you said it.
Thank you. Councillor Constable.
And through you, Madam Mayor, I want to talk about a few figures, so we may have to go into confidential.
Okay. So there's a process we will need to go through, councillors, in confidential.
Just bear with us, councillors, because of the new meeting practices.
Old.
No, well,
okay.
Old meeting practices, but the new format that we have to operate under. and
Okay.
over to the General Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in accordance with Section 10A2 of the Local Government Act, Council can exclude members of the public from the meeting and go into closed session to consider confidential matters if those matters involve commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it or confirm a commercial advantage on a competitor of the council. So for that to occur, we need to say that if a member of our virtual gallery would like to object to going into confidential, you need to phone, this is the phone number, 4474 1358, and I'll repeat that, 4474 1358, which is the usual phone number you would ring to register and so forth. So we'll now close down the meeting for 5 minutes. Adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes for anyone who would like to object to going into confidential to do so.
Hold on before you all take off. No one can take off, but councillors, I will need a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to allow for members of our community to lodge any objections. Moved by Councillor Pollock, seconded by Councillor Nathan. Councillors, please don't go anywhere.
Vote.
Sorry, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor McGinley, Councillor Main. Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll be back in 5 minutes. We're just going to allow, and do not go anywhere. Welcome back, councillors and members of our community who've been watching us via live stream. In the adjournment, which we took to give members of our public to lodge objections to council going into confidential, we had 2 members of the community who have called in to voice their objections to us going into confidential. So the process will be, we will ring those members of the community and have them on loudspeaker. The first of those members of the community is Peter Coggan. So we're just calling Peter at the moment. Bear with us. Hello, Peter. Are you ready? You have 2 minutes. 2 minutes to lodge your objection to us going into confidential.
Okay, councillors, I wish to lodge an objection to going into confidential. I've read through Part 10A of the Local Government Act, and no article in that reads to block or to move into private discussion. It should be open debate and left in the full council. I repeat, I have read the whole section of Part 10A of the Local Government Act. So there's no reason why the full cost of the construction can't now be tabled, because no one is compromised in this project from now on. It should be tabled, and the elected people, councillors, should have the opportunity to support and speak for the local community. It's a democracy, and our voice should be heard through our local representatives. If you close it off now, you are suppressing information that needs to be tabled, and we do live in a democracy, don't we? End of presentation.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for your objections. Thank you. So, councillors, the next member of the community that wants to lodge an objection to us going into confidential is Mr. Harry Watson-Smith. We're just calling Harry right now. This is Harry. Hello, Harry. It's Mayor Liz Innes here. You have 2 minutes to lodge your objection to us going into confidential when you're ready.
Okay. Isn't Peter speaking?
No.
There's a slight delay.
Slight delay. Sorry, just wait till he finishes. Our apologies.
Right. Good afternoon, councillors. I didn't realise there was a delay. My objection is very simple. There should be transparency in all decisions made by councillors. The name of the tenderer can be omitted from the discussion, and the cost should also be excluded as the elements of commercial in confidence. The balance, as put forward this morning by certain councillors, in my opinion, should be discussed in open council meeting. I can see someone nodding their head there. And that is my only point. The name should be excluded and the costs excluded. The other discussion should be an open, transparent discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Watson-Smith.
Well, through the Mayor, so now in terms of councils would need to make a resolution that you move into confidentiality in light of the section 10A(2) and also in relation to it being in the public interest to go into confidential. So I'll hand back to the Mayor to have a mover and seconder should council decide to go into confidential.
I believe we've already had a mover and seconder to go into confidential.
No, we didn't.
No, I think Councillor McGinley seconded it. Am I correct? Oh, okay. All right, so councillors, we have a mover, Councillor Constable, I believe, moved to go into confidential. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I did this. Certainly, I'm quite happy to have the debate in open forum, but I did it recognising the protocols as advised by the General Manager, and because in the strength of the debate, there could be some things that might be breached. So I thought that this case would be the best avenue to go. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Constable. Can I have a seconder to move into confidential? Councillor Pollock, thank you. Councillors, are there any questions or debate onto whether to go into confidential? Councillor Main.
Oh, thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you, I just think it's a courtesy to the two members of the public who just dialed in. Could we just have a response as to the points they've raised?
Well, through the Mayor, I can only repeat what I've said previously, that under section 10A(2), that it reads that council can exclude members of the public from the meeting and go into closed session to consider confidential matters if those matters involve Part D, commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it. So that is section 10A of the Local Government Act, and I also have discussed the local government tendering guidelines. So both of those umbrella issues I have already gone through.
Thank you.
Councillor McGinley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Just to those two people who phoned in with their objections, I'm actually going to approve going into confidential because I want to be able to talk numbers, and at present we're unable to do so because those numbers include, among other things, the proposed tender price and other confidential issues. So with your almost forgiveness, really, in this occasion, I would like to go into confidential because I want to hear what Councillor Constable's got to say, and I want to hear what numbers he has problems with, and so we can discuss it. Thank you.
Councillor Nathan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I am of the opinion that we have had briefings, and prior to the briefings there have been discussions almost to the point of ad nauseum about all of these issues. And if perhaps some of the councillors were unable to attend for whatever reason, I feel that this is very much a reiteration again and again of the same information, sort of like saying, well, if we repeat it often enough, the information will be different. And also, Councillor Constable, there is no way that I'm diminishing the integrity or importance of the work done by the Risk and Audit Committee in any way, shape or form. So if you thought I was alluding to that, please, I wasn't.
Thank you, Councillor Nathan. Councillors, this is, after all, just a motion to go into confidential. Is there any other questions or debate on it? Put the matter to the vote. Those in favour? Those in favour are Councillor Tate, myself, Councillor Innes, Councillor McGinley, Councillor Constable, Councillor Brown, Councillor May and Councillor Pollack. Those against? Councillor Nathan and Councillor Thompson. The motion has been carried to go into confidential. Thank you, councillors. Just wait.
While we're waiting, Lindsay.
Nathan. Councillor Nathan, we are back live streaming. Councillors, I need to let members of the community know that during the confidential section of this meeting, no decisions were made. Councillors only asked questions and held debate. Councillors, we are still in committee of the whole. So, councillors, we are dealing with agenda item PSR 20/015, Batemans Bay Regional Aquatic Arts and Leisure Centre. I open it back up for any questions or debate, councillors. Councillor McGinley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, probably to the General Manager. Before we went into confidential, we were talking about some of the sources to bridge the gap. And one of them you mentioned was Crown Reserves. Is the site of the proposed aquatic centre on a Crown Reserve?
I believe it, through the Mayor, I believe it is. Mr. Usher might be able to, Mr. Greenway might be able to confirm. I think it's part, but I'll hand over to Mr. Greenway to answer that question.
Yes, it is on Crown Reserve. It's on a number of lots all within the Crown Reserve that's known as Mackay Park. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions or debate? If not, I'll put the matter to the vote. That's it. Councillor Constable.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The Speaker made some notice of an Aboriginal claim over the property. Could Mr. Greenway or Director Usher just enunciate to ensure to put people's mind at rest that there is that all is as total propriety and we're not actually, we have control over the property in its entirety to actually accept a tender.
Mr. Greenway.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So there are Aboriginal land claims and native title claims over the whole of the Shire. They're different legal processes. There was a specific Aboriginal land claim over this block, which has been withdrawn. The native title side claim is with the federal court, but councillors received legal advice that native title has been extinguished on these blocks. So
Thank you.
In hand.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions or debate? Councillor Nathan, I believe you are next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Usher. In his briefing, in the papers that he presented us, he gave a list of milestones that has led us to this position. I wonder whether he has any idea of the, or possible estimate of the time spent to reach those milestones. So I'm looking at man hours or person hours, let's be politically correct, that have taken to get to this stage. I mean, I know how much I feel I've spent just as part of this for the last 4 years.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can't give you an exact number in terms of number of hours. I can say that Council has a staff member who is working on this project full time. And we also, as you're aware, councillors have public works assisting from a project management perspective. So there's quite a bit of effort and cost has gone into reaching this point of the process.
Councillor McGinley, I think you're next, and then Councillor May.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've asked this privately a number of times. I'm going to ask it again publicly this time. I think it would be in the public interest for people to know the size of the gap that we're talking about and what the total budget is that we're about to vote on very, very shortly. It doesn't impinge on the commercial and confidence element of the tender for the contractor, because that tender is just one of 10 separate cost sources for this complete budget. So I just like, could we just get it out there in the open and say, what is the total budget for this project that we're voting on today, please?
Through the Mayor, I'm not at liberty to give the total budget because in relation to the components of the budget, there are a number of components that are commercial in confidence. However, if it's helpful to the Council, I can talk about what the components are. Perhaps that will give some broader view. So some of the project components are the environmental assessment and related studies. There's been legal advice. We've dealt with the mini golf. We have a principal design consultant. We have project coordination and management. We have professional services, fees and charges, head contractor construction works, contingency and furniture fit out and equipment estimate. So that's that's the components of the total budget, but it would not be, I think, appropriate for Council at this stage to talk about what that equals.
Can I just point out that if we don't mention the cost of any one of those, there are 10 costs, I don't see how it can impact on anyone discerning the cost of any one of those 10 and why we can't just give the total budget. That's what we're voting on today.
Well, through the Mayor, I've been advised that's not appropriate to release that for a number of reasons, which we went through in the briefing.
Sorry, advised by whom?
In terms of what is commercial in confidence.
But who advised you?
Through staff and external matters, external advice, but mainly through staff advice.
Okay.
Councillor Main, I believe you're next.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just a question. We heard earlier about, so we know there's a gap. We've got the grant funding. We know there's a gap. We can't talk about the size of the gap, commercial confidence, because we need to respect the tender process. But in order to fill the gap, let's call it X, the GM just took us through several different ways that we would do that. I'm just probably trying to understand, does the community understand what we're going to now be doing differently? Was the community aware of what the GM said today, before today, or was this new for the community? And do they understand the implications of these decisions, given that that's a Shire-wide approach to what is an important Batemans Bay development, but it's Shire-wide. So is the community across those points?
Which points exactly are you talking about, Councillor May?
So the general manager earlier referred to there's a gap will be made up from several different selling of assets, the development, Section 94, Crown Reserves, etc. So when the GM took us through those points, is the community aware of those changes?
Just a moment, Councillor Mann.
Thank you.
Look, Councillor, I'm grappling a little bit with the question that you've just asked. But look, I'd just like to make this comment about what the community have been made aware of. And from my understanding and following this process for a very long time, Councillor, we have been forthcoming with as much information to our community as we possibly can, except with the exception of that information that is commercial in confidence. Now, ultimately, what the community knows is what the community knows. What concerns me is what you, myself, and my fellow councillors know, because we are the ones that need to have all the information in front of us to make a decision on behalf of those who have, as it was stated today, democratically elected us to make decisions on their behalf. Councillors, are there any more questions or debate? Councillor Nathan.
A number of issues to you, thank you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps the first is a question to Director Usher. Whenever I in business have had a range of tenders for my own business, I've been aware that if you have variations, like in whatever you're planning, that will actually vary and influence the total budget. So for me, it means if you give a total budget to a tenderer, it potentially discloses to all the others what that budget is. So I really find it very difficult to understand the questions that Councillor McGinley and Councillor Main have raised, because one, to me, obviously gives the other. Could you elucidate on that a bit, Director Usher?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor, your council has deliberately not provided a public figure in terms of the budget up to this date for not wanting to influence the potential tender to make sure we get the most competitive price. Likewise, we haven't released the information in the business case for that same reason, because that includes assumptions and costing in regards to the operation and management of the facility, which, in accordance with your decision back in, I think it was March or February, for the management model, we will need to go to tender to find someone to manage this facility. So we want to make sure we don't compromise that process, and we ensure we get the best possible outcome for council and the community in doing that.
So, Councillor McGinley, you had your hand up next. Councillor Main, you had your hand up and then took it down. But anyway, Councillor McGinley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to anyone who chooses to answer. Today, again, the main part of this whole recommendation is around approving a budget. Sorry, there's a phone ring in the background. Now, that budget, when are we actually going to disclose to the public what budget we have decided on today?
As soon as
it's obviously not now, but when are we going to tell them what is that total budget that we're approving on their behalf?
As soon as the decision's made and the meeting is over,
sorry, through the mayor,
we will need to make the successful tenderer aware of the decision, and then as soon as practical, it will be made public.
So just to elaborate on what the mayor has said, so we need to let the successful and unsuccessful tenderers know. There's also some discussion in relation to that, which is with the successful tenderer, because we are hoping to negotiate some other aspects which might lower the price of the tender, and which is why the budget in total might be less than what is currently in your papers. It won't be more. So we need to go through that process, because we understand, we think that there's some potential further savings to be made, which we will certainly pursue if council makes this decision. So we need to put those issues in train. We can, in fact, tell the community that a decision has been made, but we can't go into detail until we have some further discussions with the tenderer, because we might be able to negotiate not just a lower tender price, but a whole lower budget price, which is...
We'll be telling them what the decision is today.
Mr. Usher might want to just elaborate on that. It's why we can't make the decision today. Why we can't let the community know, and what we can tell them today and what we shouldn't or can't.
So, Catherine, through you, Madam Mayor, under the local government general regulation, we need to notify the outcome of the tender process, but we can't do that until we finalise the contract, which is what you're referring to. So, council's decision today is basically deciding on the preferred tenderer, and then also entering into a contract negotiation with that tenderer. So, part of the tender process, we ask tenderers to also identify potential cost savings. We need to, once you've made a decision as to who the preferred tenderer is, work with them to finalise that tender process or that contract process and negotiation. Once we enter into the contract, we can disclose all that information.
Thank you, Councillor McGinley, is it related to the same question?
Yes.
Okay.
Director Usher has just said this is all about awarding a contract today. I'll repeat probably for the fifth time, the main thing for me is that we're approving a budget using ratepayers funding. That's the main part. The tender is just one component of that budget. So I'm sorry, I just don't accept the fact that, again, even after this decision is made, we're going to have to wait until as soon as practicable to let the people know what decision we made today in terms of how we are committing their money to a project. I'm sorry, I just disagree. I would like to see that number revealed, not as soon as practicable, but the decision we've made today, the budget we've allocated, allowing it might change in the future, that should be revealed today, I believe.
Thank you, Councillor McGinley. Councillor Main, you had your hand up, but it's gone down again. I'm assuming you still want to speak. Okay.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah.
When you're putting it on the screen, it's actually physically dropping off pretty much straight away. So I don't know if you just removed it.
Yeah. No, it just seems to drop off after about 30 seconds or something. So I'll keep my physical hand up.
So
I just wanted to
do that, and then I'll know you're still on.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you. I just wanted to pick up a point that Councillor Nathan and that you worked through earlier, and the logic of the thinking here. Earlier in this session, Councillor McKinlay asked a question respecting the commercial in confidence in terms of the gap, and could we have some information as to how we could fill the gap or what components? And the question was put to the GM. The GM then responded and provided four components to how that gap would be filled. Not how much, not the amount, but the areas. Now, my question is, does the community now know about that? Not the amount. I'm not looking for the tender amount. I'm not looking to convey commercial confidence issues. All I'm simply saying is, a councillor asked a question, a GM shared 4 key pieces of information. I think that's possibly new to the community. The community that we are supposed to be representing here today, is the community informed of those 4 components, what that means today, tomorrow, and the next 5 years in terms of this project? Do they understand it? Because yes, we can vote on X, and we understand X, and we've been briefed on all of that. I agree with all of that. Do I think the project's exciting? I do. Do I think that it looks terrific? I actually like the design. But does the community know what was put on the table today, or is it incumbent on us to go back to the community to say, hey, you actually need to be across how we're now going to pay for the gap? Even though we can't tell you the gap, at least be educated as to how we're going to do it. That's the point I'm trying to make, not the financials, but the mechanism which we're going to address the gap.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. I think we got your message there. I will respond by saying that we have throughout this whole process indicated, communicated to our community that we would be looking at all options to fund any potential gaps. And as I said previously, we're looking at this as a gap. I look at it a little bit differently. I look at it as council investing in our community and our community's future. But councillor, you ask whether the community is aware of where these potential funds can come, and the General Manager very clearly articulated that here in a public forum. What I will say to you is the community knows what the community knows, but councillor, the community ultimately will not be the ones voting on this. You, as their elected representative, along with myself and our fellow councillors, are the ones that need to be across this information, because we, on behalf of our community, will be making a decision.
Through the Mayor, just to clarify, Councillor Mayne, you said I mentioned 4 areas. I just want to clarify that I didn't. I mentioned 6. 4 were from reserves and 2 were from asset sales that have already been discussed. So that is my advice. Can I pause a minute?
Are we still live stream?
What's going on?
Can you hear me, Lindsay?
We're just.
I can hear you, Pat. I don't know what's going on, mate. Are we having a meeting or what?
We're just.
I'm sorry, councillors. We're just getting some advice. If you could bear with us for one moment.
Do we need to have a break?
Sorry, I'm going to have a break.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind going having a bit of a 5 minute to get yourself sorted. 5 minute break. Move for a 5 minute break.
So I need
need a break.
councillors, I need a moving agenda. We'll take a mover. Sorry. Councillors, I need a mover and seconder to take a 10-minute break.
Yep.
Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Constable. All those in favour?
Can you let us know what the advice is you're seeking?
So welcome back, everybody, after our short adjournment. Because the issue of the releasing of the budget and the funding is such an important one, in particular to a few of our councillors, all of our councillors. The General Manager is just going to give you a clear outline as to why it is not appropriate for us to release the total budget.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to be crystal clear for the council and for the gallery, so as Mr. Usher indicated, we will need to go into discussions and negotiations with the agreed tenderer as agreed by yourselves today. Now, if in the case that those negotiations were to break down or fail, then council would then need to go back and re-tender potentially. If council were to release the total budget, then that would have the potential to influence negatively any future tender, because the total budget price, of course, is different to the tender price. So that is the predominant reason that I would recommend that the total budget price not be released, because of that inherent risk down the track in relation to should those issues occur. So I just want to be really clear on why that is the case.
Thank you, councillors. So, councillors, we remain in the committee of the whole. I would like to, wrap this section of the meeting up. So, councillors, are there any further questions or debate? Councillor Nathan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to reiterate what I presented when we were in confidential, and that is that 4 years ago, I was really not very keen on this project because I thought it was preemptive. My thinking has changed considerably as we've gone through the process and all the various milestones which have been backed up by the staff work, by community consultation, by our deliberations, by our briefings and by our votes. So much so that I believe that we are almost voting on plebiscite rather than as our elected members, because we've gone through so much community consultation. And my thinking has changed because we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what the future is going to bring. We are in a situation where we have got a virus that is being handled at different levels of government all over the world in different ways. If we're going to stand still and say, no, we're not going to go ahead, how much are we going to wrap ourselves in cotton wool? How much are we going to cocoon ourselves individually, as a community, as a state, and as a nation? So for all of those reasons, I think that this project, as Director Usher so eloquently put in his information, the social impact and the economic development and employment potential really have changed my thinking. I think that this is a beacon of hope, and if we vote on this and the selected tenderer can start as soon as it dries up a little bit, who knows, we might even have this with a COVID-free community for the summer next year. I would be thrilled. Oh, and of course, we're still in council for another, we're still the elected body for another year.
Councillors, I'm going to enter into the debate, and I'm going to look, just there's a few things that I would like to comment on, and I did touch on it previously about the gap that people are, you know, obviously concerned about. And as I said before, I don't see it as a gap. I see it as an opportunity for this council to invest in the future of our community. I also note that there have been the detractors of this project, and at times I am concerned about some of the misinformation that has been out in our community's domain. However, setting that aside and looking at the incredible opportunities and the positives that this project brings and represents to our community, I'm absolutely delighted to be here at this point today with my fellow councillors after an incredible journey with our community. This has been a community-driven project. This has been a desire for our community to see fulfilled for many, many years, and I'm proud to be part of it. The detractors have tried to put a disparaging context on the fact that this will be mine and your, as a council's, legacy. Well, I hope so. I think it will be an incredible legacy, a legacy that will look after those who are older in our community that need the warm water therapy, those kids that desperately want to go and have some sort of social outlet, the children that still want to train, those people that want to lap swim, the wonderful arts facility that, you know, the debate around, you know, people having a want for a 50-metre pool has somewhat taken over. But let's not forget that we are going to be delivering in this incredible facility a wonderful opportunity for the arts community in Batemans Bay and Eurobodalla Shire. So, councillors, I am absolutely proud to be at this point after the hard work and the dedication of you, my fellow councillors, of our incredible staff, but more so from our community, that every single time this subject comes up and I do the limpness test with those out in my community that are not what I believe on an agenda to derail this, but the mums and dads, the average people out in our community, when the subject of this aquatics and arts facility comes up, they are absolutely behind it. They are so keen to start us. They want it tomorrow. So, councillors, I'm commending this motion. I can't wait to see the sod turned. I can't wait to see this project start. Any other councillors want to ask questions or enter into the debate? Councillor Brown, and then Councillor Main, and then Councillor Tate.
Just a question, just to clarify, because we talked about this this gap of funds. That's coming from, just to be clear, that's coming from existing available cash that we have. There is no borrowings, and there is no, other than what we've had at the moment, and there is no future sales identified, because there was discussion at one stage, you know, different properties were looking at being sold to fund this. So I just wanted that crystal clear so the community knows that what we're doing here is pretty much self-funding this particular operation out of current reserves that are available for this such purpose.
Through the Mayor, yes, that's correct.
Councillor, I think it was Councillor Main was next.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you. Look, I probably appreciate a number of the points you've just articulated. I think it is a positive project full of potential, and I see the merit of a little bit of Keynesian economics 101 playing through from a stimulus viewpoint into a recession, an economy mired in recession at the moment. I get that. My challenge is I'm supposed to be representing an informed community. I think we did hear quite a bit of a game changer today in terms of how we're going to address this gap. I therefore do not think I'm in a position to represent my community, because I don't think my community's had a chance to get its head around these points, because I don't want to die wondering on what is probably the most significant decision of our time in council. I'd like to move a motion that we defer so that the community can get its head around the 6 points raised by the GM to understand how we're going to address the gap, and is that okay with them, and then proceed with the opportunity. So it's a pretty simple motion. It's late in the day, I appreciate it, but I think it's a significant one.
Yes, Councillor, can we see your words around that, please?
Yep, sure. If I just email something through.
Have a point of order, please. My understanding is we are currently in the committee of the whole.
We are, correct.
So if any decision is to be made, we would want to go out of the committee of the whole and into the formal debate.
That's absolutely correct.
So we're going to move a motion to go on the committee of the whole.
So, councillors, do you want to have a motion to move out of committee of the whole to allow us to deal? You can all still have your say and debate once we go out of committee of the whole.
Someone wants to move it.
Can someone please move that we go out of committee of the whole so we can deal with this, please? Moved by Councillor McGinley, seconded by Councillor Main to go out of committee of the whole. Those in favour? Those in favour are Councillor Brown, myself, Councillor Innes, Councillor McGinley, Councillor Main, Councillor Tate, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Pollack, Councillor Nathan. Those against? Councillor Constable. Motion's been carried to go back into normal council meetings. Now, Councillor Main, now we deal with your, what is it called?
He wants to amend it. Oh,
Motion to defer.
A motion to defer.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just typing that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like some clarification. We have a motion before us that's moved and seconded. While I would endorse it is very similar to the, but on a different level of consideration to the deferment that I was seeking, I'm unsure if this motion can go up in looking at it, because it is contrary to the motion that we're actually debating at the present time. I probably need some ruling on that. I'm not trying to certainly undermine Councillor Main in this space. I'm just concerned about process.
Yes, Councillor, and we're just getting some clarification for you as we speak.
So through the Mayor, if Councillor Main sends that through to us.
Could you send it through to Kylie, please, Councillor Main?
In relation to your first question, Councillor Constable, I think you're saying, firstly, I could be wrong, but you're saying it's similar, and it is similar because to defer, it's a different reason to defer. So on balance, my advice would be to let it proceed. In relation to fundamentally, we have had motions that have been moved and seconded, and then there's another motion to defer in the past. So we have allowed that in the past. I'll just get that confirmed.
So what's the process?
So through the Mayor, yes, we've decided, our advice is that you can move and second this motion. So we've got to move it.
So, councillors, we have a motion, proposed motion in front of us. It's been moved by Councillor Main, seconded by Councillor McGinley. We're just going to share it on the screen with you.
I don't have it.
Oh, Councillor Main, we don't have it yet.
Okay, it's gone through. It might be, I'm going to blame the wet weather if it hasn't arrived.
It's soggy.
Yes. Yes, 2 large trees down in the backyard. Rats.
Councillors, just bear with us. Obviously, it's coming through. Just give it a few minutes.
No, it is literally sitting in my computer stuck. Wait. Come on, work with me, Jerry. Kylie, can I read it out to you, please? Through you, GM.
Councillor Main,
Yes.
is there any chance you could screenshot it and just send it as a text to us, to Anna?
Yeah, great idea. Thank you. To Anna?
Yes, please. Oh, no, it's okay. Kylie's got it.
Ooh. The sun is shining. Only just. I'd welcome any input and guidance. It's an ad-libbed motion, Madam Mayor, and it needs to have some points put into it.
Okay.
Councillors, we're just going to share the proposed motion with you now. Councillors, hopefully you had an opportunity to read the proposed motion. You have a mover and a seconder. Councillors, are there any questions or debate on the motion proposed in front of you? No, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those for the motion are Councillor Main, Councillor McGinley and Councillor Constable. Those against? Those against are Councillor Brown, myself, Councillor Innes, Councillor Pollock, Councillor Tate, Councillor Nathan and Councillor Thompson. The motion has been lost. Councillors, we go back to the original motion as it stands. And so we're clear. The motion is agenda item PSR 20/015, Batemans Bay Regional Aquatic Arts and Leisure Centre. Councillors, we are now out of the committee of the whole, so I remind you that you can ask as many questions as you like, but you can only put one debate forward. So councillors, any questions or debate? Councillor Nathan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I have a question of Councillor Main. Why do you think that it is necessary to consider Keynesian Economics 101 in the light of the economic development and employment potential of this project, when there are other examples of economics that are in fact being recognised at the federal level that come more from Austrian school economics, pump priming, etc.?
I'd love to respond. You actually think more referring to the Chicago School of Economics and your friend Milton Friedman when you're talking about the likes of former PM Margaret Thatcher and former President Ronald Reagan, to whom the Josh Frydenberg, our Treasurer, referred to as exemplar models as to the way he's going to forge his way through the economic conundrum in this country. I just think that's extraordinary. So in terms of this council taking a more Keynesian economic approach to stimulating the economy when it's in the doldrums as opposed to the nonsense of trickle-down economics, I think it's to be commended. But thanks for the opportunity to answer that.
Thank you, Councillor Main. I think we're digressing, councillors, and I'm just going to ask you please to stay on topic. Councillors, are there any more questions or debate? Okay, councillors, if there's no more questions or debate, Councillor Brown, is that one finger in the air a hand up?
We voted on the draft, haven't we? Yeah. On the just trying to concentrate here. The amendment that Councillor Main put through, that's been defeated now. It's correct. So we're back into the main body of the meeting. Yep, good.
Yes.
Been toing and going a lot, so I'm just trying to follow it all, that's all.
I thought I was pretty clear on that. Councillor Pollock, you're on mute.
So you want to wrap, you moved the motion.
Councillor Pollock, it's you moved the motion. I'm going to ask you to close the debate, please.
Right. There's been a lot of peripheral conversation about this issue. It's had a thorough airing over a 4-year plus position. It's actually gained the greatest level of state and federal support of any program ever put through or put forward by this council. None of that happens without significant scrutiny from all of those sources. We've reached the stage now where we have all been educated and informed all the way through. Several of our colleagues have expressed concern about the business case. They might have been far better informed had they actually chosen to attend the particular presentations made regarding the business case that were attended by the majority of councillors. Unfortunately, not all. We've now had some peripheral debate about a difference between tender and final cost. We're elected to make decisions. People had the confidence in all 9 people that were elected to make those decisions on their behalf, not to run back to every Tom, Dick and Harry with every minor piece of finance of whatever decision we might be making. It's absolute tripe to suggest that every piece of financial information needs to go back for endorsement. There's no point in endorsing, in electing people to make decisions in the first place if you're going to do that, and you can end up disappearing down a drain hole as well by not going ahead and grabbing opportunities as they come forward. We've got a piece of infrastructure in Batemans Bay which has more than served its purpose, which is now well and truly outside its use by date. We have an opportunity to create an asset for this community for the next 50 years. It's been done to death, it's been examined, it's been thoroughly organised, computerised and examined from every particular angle by both internal, external and state and federal colleagues. It's time to get on with the situation. It's funded, nobody's suffering, no project, no program within the Shire that has been put forward or envisaged is going to suffer or not go ahead because of this particular program. It's time now to get along with it and support it and watch it come out of the ground.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, I'm going to put the matter to the vote, and just so we're perfectly clear, we are voting on agenda item PSR 20/015, Batemans Bay Regional Aquatics Arts and Leisure Centre. Councillors, those for. Those for are myself, Councillor Liz Innes, Councillor Brown, Councillor Pollock, Councillor Nathan, Councillor Thompson. Those against, and Councillor Tate, sorry, Councillor Tate. Those against? Those against are Councillor McGinley, Councillor Main and Councillor Constable. The motion has been carried. Thank you, councillors.